What's up, guys? Yes, I'm back. Same day, second video. So you get two for the price of one, which is really no price. So, anyway, moving on. I wanted to talk a bit about the gaming industry, the business model of the gaming industry, and somewhat tying that in with 704 Games and what we've been seeing with the NASCAR franchise. Now, I want to thank one of the guys who did answer for me in the previous video when I was talking about day to night transitions. I do have a bad memory, so sometimes it's appreciated when you guys, correct me on something or at least remind me of something. And I did remember, yeah, playing NASCAR games in the past, and I could have sworn there was a day to night transition, and it was somebody did confirm it. I think NASCAR '08 and '09 did have day to night transitions. So thank you for kind of confirming that I you know wasn't misremembering. And yeah, not only that, apparently if you ran a short race below 25%, you didn't really see the transition. And that sounds to me like another solution. If Sean Wilson said, like he said, that the sun would move too fast in a short race, well, then you should just make the transition work only if you run a longer race. Again, it just proves that his answer is stupid because EA was able to do this 10 years ago. So, one, it's a stupid answer. Two, it's a dishonest answer. So he was kind of making it seem as if, yeah, we could have done it, but we chose not to because of that, because the sun would move too fast for people that run very short races. That's a stupid answer, and it's dishonest because if that stopped you from doing it, you could have just came up with that idea and said, well, make it only happen if you race a longer race. That's easy to do. EA did it 10 years ago. Or you could let the fucking sun move fast. Who cares? You know, uh, if people felt that that was somehow jarring to them, then run a longer race. It wouldn't happen so quickly. It's just dumb all around. And so thanks for confirming that stuff. And I did kind of remember there was day night transition before. So there you go. So moving on from that, I want to talk a little bit more about the state of the gaming industry today and something in particular. Uh, this whole, business model of DLCs and microtransactions and all this stuff that's, been getting worse and worse through the years. And, why is this happening? Yes, a big part of it is just greed by publishers and developers. If they can make more money doing something, they're going to do it. That's just the way it is. But there's another aspect of it that it kind of makes sense, but then there's a solution that I wouldn't call it a solution because there's pros and cons to everything. But the what I'm thinking is this: when you think about the pricing of games and this $60 price model that we've seen, a lot of you guys are a lot younger than me. Maybe that's all you've ever known is video games cost $60. But every once in a while, you'll see a small indie developer release a game for a lot cheaper. But it's the reasons for that have to do with marketing as well as uh, the fact that some of these games probably are a lot smaller in content. Um, and these are really small developers, and maybe they just don't have. It's in their best interest to put this stuff out there at a cheaper price so people are more willing to take a chance on it. But other than that, and the occasional, even a bigger developer might release something that they know is just a very small experience. and they'll sell it for cheaper, stuff like that. But most of the time, games are released, they're $60, and for some reason that hasn't changed in a very, very long time. And meanwhile, the cost of development has gone up with hardware and software and all these advancements. It does take more money today to develop games than in years past. So, looking at that, it really doesn't make a lot of sense that for some reason most publishers have stuck with this price model of $60. And instead, they've just tried to make their money on the side with DLC, microtransactions. The problem is that while they can make more money doing that, it also ends up hurting the initial product, the main game. And the reason it hurts it are two things. Basically, one, they're stripping down the main game in order to create DLC. Like, there are things that used to be taken for granted that was just part of games, that are now being parceled out for DLC to repackage and sell to you. That things really that are basic that should have been part of the game. Now, when you look at NASCAR games, what you've seen is these DLC packs with paint schemes and stuff like that. When we used to buy a game and it had all of this in the game, every driver had multiple paint schemes. We had so many paint schemes, and it wasn't even a second thought. And as time has gone on, developers have chosen to sell games with very little in terms of that stuff or content, and just repackage these things to you as DLC. Some people excuse it. Some people say, "Oh, that's perfectly fine." But the problem is that when you buy the main game, these things that were part of it are no longer there. So you're getting more of a stripped down version of what you used to get. And I don't think it's necessary. And I think that I'm going to suggest something. Okay, and it's a lot of people I know, they're going to fucking say, "What are you, fucking crazy? Why would we want to do this?" But basically, I do think it's time for the gaming industry, as far as the development side, the publishers and the developers, they should consider bringing up the price of these games. We've been paying $60 a game for a long time, and their development costs have gone up. And it's strange that why would you not even raise the price of the games? Now, I don't want to pay more. We all want to pay less. But the problem is that now it's created this second market of DLC and microtransactions where these guys are trying to make their money on the back end. And what happens is, if you just buy these games and you don't get this extra stuff, you get a stripped down experience. And that's why these games today don't feel as fleshed out as older games from the past. You used to buy a game and everything that was there that was developed for the game came with the game. There was no later on you get DLC and pay extra for this and for that. And for most of it is stuff that should have been part of the main game. We used to get this stuff. It wasn't a second thought. And think of it this way. What if you bought a car and it didn't come with air conditioning? You would say, "What the fuck is this?" And they told you, "Well, that's extra. You got to pay extra for that. If you want air conditioning, you got to pay so much extra." You'd be like, "You're fucking insane. A brand new car with no air conditioning?" Because it's not even considered a convenience feature. When you buy cars, you do have options, what they call convenience options. Things like heated seats, a sunroof, or appearance packages, things like that you can live without. Air conditioning is no longer a convenience option. Now, the last time that was considered a convenience option in the automotive industry was way back in the 50s. At some point, it just became the norm. Cars have air conditioning. There's not even a second thought. Now, could you imagine now people selling cars without air conditioning, and then they just tell you, well, that's extra. You can purchase that afterwards if you want to. You'd be like, you're out of your fucking mind. This is a basic feature. This isn't even a feature. It's just part of the car. So I look at what's happening in the game industry in a similar way. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but when you talk about certain features that used to be just part of the game that are being split apart before a game is released so that they can package it later on. Now, there is DLC, as I've said in the past, where it adds something to the main game, like a whole new story, like a whole new experience. That's okay. To me, that is legitimate DLC. Because you just created a whole new chapter to a story that you could live without it, but if you want to experience it, you buy it. That's acceptable, in my opinion. But things like paint schemes or skins, all this extra crap, so that's one reason why this DLC model is not good. And these microtransactions are not good because they're selling you stuff that should have been part of the main game. That's number one. And the other thing is this imbalance that's created, or what a lot of people call pay to win. In other words, things that if you don't purchase, you have a disadvantage when you play the game. And you see that a lot in a lot of games that are first-person shooters, all these games, Battlefront, Destiny, all these games, all these microtransactions that they add that give certain people that buy this stuff an advantage over those who don't. That is an imbalance. Now, my first experience with it, where I really realized this is a fucking problem and I don't like where it's going, was with Max Payne 3. An amazing game. I love that game. I think it's underrated. But it was the first game that I played online and I realized this is a fucking problem. Rockstar purposely created a serious imbalance. And if you didn't buy the DLC, you didn't get these crazy fucking weapons that are overpowered compared to the people who didn't buy it. These bomb suits that make you indestructible. And in combination with these fucking bursts, what they call a big dog, it makes you indestructible. And if you play that game became unplayable. You had people dominating matches, dying maybe once or twice in the entire match. Just destroying people. And that creates an imbalance in the game. And that's really not fair to anybody. But I knew back then this was going to be a fucking problem. And I was right. Now it's everywhere. So that's the other reason why this business model, they really need to do something about it. Now, how can you ask them to do away with it because it's extra revenue? Well, this is why I'm saying that they should consider raising the prices of games, from 60. And this is, don't take this number as a certainty, right? You would have to actually sit down, make calculations and figure out the economy of the industry. So it's fair for the consumer and it's also fair for the developer. But I'm just throwing this number out there and it's arbitrary. Let's say the games were now $75. Yeah, I know. Oh, it's $15 fucking more. But listen to this. If every consumer who bought a game was paying $75, that is a guaranteed extra $15 per copy for the publisher. Okay? Whereas the current model is, it's $60 a game, but now you're buying DLC. You got all the extra stuff is on the side, and when you add up all that stuff, it usually ends up being a lot more than $15, right? And then if you choose not to buy it, yeah, you only spent $60 on the game, and you're saving money, but you're missing out on a lot of stuff that should have been part of the game, first of all, and even things that could be considered extras. It creates, there's an imbalance. So if you don't spend all that extra money, you're at a disadvantage as a player. So if you paid $75 for the game, you get everything the game was supposed to come with, and there's no, okay, this stuff is extra and it's on the side and it's DLC and all these microtrans. No, they can do away with that because now they're making their money right off the, from the front, at the front end, from the price of the game. So it's possible that, yeah, there's going to be a difference in the profits, but I look at it this way. You're guaranteed $15 extra for every copy you sell. Whereas when you, in the current system, you don't really know how much money you can make. Yeah, most of the time these guys make a killing off DLC and these microtransactions, but not everyone gets that stuff. So let's say you sell 1 million copies of a game. You don't really know what percentage of that consumer base is also going to spend extra on DLC. You don't really know that. And all the calculating and research in the world isn't going to give you a definitive number. Whereas if you sold 1 million copies at $75, people would pay the extra money if they understood that I'm getting everything this game has to offer. There was nothing that was stripped out of it or repackaged or anything. That also helps, I think, with the imbalance that I'm talking about, whereas the incentive for developers to create a game that's purposely out of balance in order to entice you to buy this extra stuff, that incentive is no longer there because they're like, well, we're not doing the DLC or microtransaction stuff. We're charging more for the main game. So now we can focus on the game. And there's no imbalance because everyone gets everything the game has to offer right up front when you pay $75. And so I think it would help with all this stuff. Now, of course, there is the chance that these guys would say, well, why not raise the price of the games and still do the microtransactions and DLC? Well, I think that's when the market itself would it would kick back, I think. I think people then would say, now you're charging me more for the game and you're still coming after me through the back end. That would be a serious problem for the gaming industry. And I think that would resolve itself. I just don't see that, I think it's fair. Raise the prices on the game and you get your money up front and you provide the product. You get 100% of what was developed for the game. You get it up front. And it allows developers now to focus on the game and the quality of the game rather than how do we create a game where we have to make these imbalances that entice people to buy the DLC or spend money on microtransactions. And now you got your 100% focus on game quality rather than manipulating the game to work a certain way. And I think that would give us better games. We used to get better games. And we used to buy these games and everything the game had to offer was there. You didn't feel like I'm buying a fucking game with a bunch of shit missing. So I really think that the gaming industry, the business side of it, they really do need to consider just coming out the box. And somebody, anyone can do it. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. And it's always been something that was a huge question mark for me. Like, why haven't they done it? Why are they stuck on this $60 price point? And my only guess would be that it would turn off gamers. It would be like, hey, now you're charging X amount for the games. Fuck it, But I think that's something that they shouldn't worry about because the gaming industry is like any other industry. And when production costs go up, development costs, all these things go up, the consumers end up paying for that. And I would much rather pay for it up front, knowing I'm going to get everything this game has to offer and a better quality game. And I do think there's a correlation there with the reason we don't get the type of games we used to get. Now, on a technical level, yeah, today's games are a lot better, on a technical level. Like the graphics are better and other things. But in terms of content and just overall quality, the games from years ago were better. I'm sorry, they just were. Now that doesn't mean that every game today is bad. It's not. There are some good games out there, but they're rare. And we used to get some amazing games that you would play and play. The replay value was high and the stories were long. I remember the Siphon Filter series, one of my favorite game series growing up. If you saw that game today, the graphics are horrendous, but the game was awesome. It felt like it took a really long time to finish. The old Tomb Raider games, there was a lot more thought put into them. Puzzle solving, stealth type of gameplay, where it wasn't about how fast I could just mow through people and finish the chapter or each mission. It was more of, let me take everything in of what's going on. I could take my time and to reach my objective. And now it's just more, there's a lot of fluff and just, this is why people are desensitized to the violence and the other aspects of the games, because it's just constantly there. It becomes like nothing. And games years ago, you remembered the details that went into these games, and they were better games. I stand by that, and I do think that the advent of the internet and online gaming and this DLC stuff, all of that has contributed to worse games. So I really believe that the best way to go that would help the gaming industry on both sides, for the consumer and the publishers and developers, is simply raise the price of these games. Let people know that development costs have made it impossible to continue the $60 price point, and that you're going to pay more for these games, but you're going to get everything. You're not going to buy a game to find out that there are parts of the game that were taken out to resell to you as DLC. And if you look at it, let's just say it's $75. Okay, you're paying $15, but if they continue this route, then you're saving $15 initially, but you're not getting the best experience, and you're going to end up buying all this extra stuff, and you're going to spend more than $15. So I think this is a good compromise between publishers and consumers. And I know there's people out there that do not want to hear a price increase, but we're living in the real world. This is business. And just like I've been very critical of these developers and publishers and the gaming industry and the DLC and the microtransactions, I can also be objective and say, yeah, they can justify a price increase. Now, last but not least, when you think about what people are willing to spend, every year people buy these fucking new cell phones that are not that much better than the previous year. And they buy these phones only because it's the latest model. And some of these phones cost more than these game consoles. And they sleep on sidewalks, some of these people, for the next fucking iPhone. And at the end of the day, the difference between this iPhone and last year's is very minimal. And yet people, they're willing to spend the money. So don't tell me people would stop buying these fucking games if the price went to $75. Now, you have to make it sure, this is where the marketing comes in. You have to make it clear to people, you're buying a game, you're getting everything this game has to offer. It's not like you're going to buy a game and there's things taken out to be resold to you later. So they can get rid of this fucking DLC and microtrans. Now, I'm not saying all DLC, because there is DLC that's worth buying and worth doing. And like I've said, there have been games where the DLC is a whole new chapter to a game. And in many instances, just feel like a whole new game altogether. And it's not, and if you don't get it, it doesn't ruin anything of the main game. So there is room for DLC under those circumstances. But the majority of the stuff we see now, get rid of that. And at the end of the day, it's honest. It's honest business. And I really think that when these corporations, these publishers, are honest with their consumers. Like, that's the way I would do it. If I was a CEO, let's say at 704 Games, this is how I would go about it. And I would tell people, look, we're going to charge X amount for the game, but all the paint schemes, all the spotter packs, all the stuff that we've been selling as DLC, all the extras, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it day one. Or if there are certain things that are not available day one, you're gonna get it for free. You're not gonna pay for it. When it's available, you get it, you download it, and you're good to go. But you're gonna pay more for the initial game. And I honestly believe that, yeah, you're going to get people to complain, but the majority of people who understand business and what's going on, I think they would much prefer to pay a little extra up front and know you're going to get everything. And now these developers can actually focus more on game quality and making sure that it's more fleshed out experience. That's what I think. And I think that at some point, if somebody doesn't make that move, and if I was like this, whoever it is, and I would assume it's the CEO that makes the decision that, okay, this game's $50, I would go that route and I would say, no, let's add everything there is to the game, and let's just give everything to everybody when they buy that main game. But we explain to them we have to charge X amount, whether it's $70 or $75, whatever's fair. Now let's just say in this instance for NASCAR Heat 3, it's going to be $50 because it's already $10 below the normal $60 price point that all other games are. I would say if they brought it down to $70, right? Now every copy they sell they're making another $20, but everybody gets everything that the game has to offer. I really think, because the way they do it, they're doing it now. The game's $50, and if you get the Hot Pass, which includes the 3 different packs, DLC packs, that's $30. So now you add up everything, it's $80. So yeah, that might be $10 more profit for 704, but not everyone's gonna buy that. I'm not buying it. And a lot of people are just going to get the game and not buy that extra stuff. So you got to look at it as, we can make an extra 20 with every game we sell. Every copy sold is going to guaranteed extra $20. Or we continue selling the game at 50, but we're offering this $30 of DLC content, but we don't know how many people are going to buy that. I really believe they would make more profit going that route. Just sell the game at a higher price point, but put everything in the game. And I believe people understand the fairness of that. It's a miracle that we've been paying $60 for games for as long as we have. I honestly don't remember the last time that the average video game was less than $60. This has been a price point forever, it feels like. So at some point, that has to change. And that, I think, would help with the DLC and the microtransaction stuff. So those are my thoughts on it. And I want to know what you guys think. Are you okay with just continuing to pay $60 a game and then just having these games missing a lot of content that is now repackaged and sold to you as DLC? I honestly think it's just better to be upfront with people and, pay more upfront, but verify that, yes, you're going to get everything that we developed for this game. Okay? So those are my thoughts on that. I look forward to your comments. Tell me what you think.